wonder why our government are not putting this as a number one emergency in the world, because it affects them and their kids too. So surely they would want to stop this, but you're saying it's not happening.
They're the ones doing it. Why would they stop what they're doing in the first place? Again, and this is where people need to understand, and they need to look back at history at what all governments do. They're all corrupt, directly in proportion to the size and strength of the government. So where does that put the United States? So if we look back, even with our own military, our own troops, again, everything from Agent Orange in Vietnam spraying our own soldiers along with countless innocent civilians, or historical footage, Polly, you've seen the detonation of the nuclear bombs in Nevada, right? The troops that are in the ditches, they jump out of the ditches and they run toward the blast site. They were told to run toward the blast center. Every one of those U.S. military members died an early, painful, protracted death from their radiation exposure. We now know from those detonations in Nevada, no less than 500,000 Americans eventually died from the downstream fallout. How many Americans know that? So they don't care about the consequences of their actions, even to themselves. And that's key, because too many people walk away from an issue like this because they convince themselves, because they're so afraid of mortality, and we're trained to be afraid of our own mortality, petrified, something to be avoided at all costs. So anything that's an existential threat, people ram their head in the sand and deny it. But people convince themselves this can't be happening because they wouldn't do this to themselves. Polly, have you ever heard that? Common excuse for total denial. They already have done this to themselves. They've detonated 2,400 nuclear bombs all over the globe, contaminating everything. And they look at, they meaning those who print the money, by the way. The occupants of political posts, even the White House, are simply puppets in the play. And I don't care who they are. I don't care how much power it appears they have. They're on the end of strings. So any notion that this administration or any other is going to stop what our government is doing behind the scenes is a naive notion. And now, at this point, the climate engineering, aka weather warfare operations, are being ramped up to ever higher levels. Contamination is ever worse. And they're not going to stop because this is a covert weapon of control for them. It's their crown jewel weapon of control by which they can decimate populations and then blame nature. They're not going to stop unless we stop them.
And how can we stop them? Every week I ask you the same question, Dane, because that's what everyone's asking. What can we do?
It won't come from sitting the bench. And everyone from their own home computer can do an immense amount of good in this fight by sharing credible data from a credible source. Send out a link to the geoengineeringwatch.org documentary, The Dimming. That is the standard on this issue. 26 million views and counting in spite of social media censorship. That's the A to Z in this issue. Send a link to elected officials, agency officials, the heads of environmental groups. The list is endless. And CC as many other aware and awake individuals as you can. Openly CC them, write a peaceful and professional letter, and ask whoever you send this to, why aren't they addressing this greatest and most immediate threat short of nuclear cataclysm? Why not? And when you CC all those additional people, whoever you send the link to knows many are listening to that conversation and awaiting their reply. Bottom line is critical mass of awareness. That's the only way to stop this, bringing it to the full light of day so our military brothers and sisters that are being told they're doing something benevolent, something for the common good, realize they are participating in their own near-term demise. In addition to the environmental destruction, the weather cataclysms, we're breathing what they're spraying, Polly. And now we know polymer nanoparticles, key component of climate engineering. We now know from recent science study that every human brain they test has about 0.5% nanoparticles in the brain. That's 0.5% in human brains across the board. What's that doing to us? So people don't realize what they're inhaling with every breath they take because nanoparticles are so small, they're not visible to the naked eye. Radiation's not visible. Does that mean it's not harmful? No. So people need to wake up and stop pretending their lives are going to continue as they are if they just don't do anything and pretend someone else is moving the fight up the field. It's going to take all of us.